Hey, brothers and sisters, welcome to our Wednesday Ephphatha Bible study for Wednesday, the 13th of January. My name is John. I'm the pastor of First United Methodist Church here in Mountain City, Tennessee, and Trade United Methodist Church in Trade, Tennessee. Well, I'm coming to you from the past. I am pre-recording this on Tuesday because Gail and I have a doctor appointment middle of the day on Wednesday, so we'll be at that event. And I'll try to be in the chat room so we can deal with questions or things like that. As always, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the comments. We'll deal with them either as they pop up, or I'll try to get to them in the next session. We are continuing on with our journey through Exodus. We are kind of wrapping up our thoughts on the Ten Commandments, but as always, there's so much more you can dig into it. So just a matter of how much time can we take to spend on it. And then we're going to be going on from there. Let me share with you a mug from the mug of the day. Let's see if I can get it on the screen. That is a lighthouse. That is the Ponce de Leon Inlet Lighthouse in Florida. Their slogan is "Night After Night" since November 1st, 1887. Really cool lighthouse. Gail and the girls and I were fortunate to see a space shuttle launch in December of 2000. Got another mug from that trip as well. This was on the way home. We saw this lighthouse on the shore and stopped, and we were able to walk up it and just get some amazing views. And in a building on the grounds, they had removed the original first order Fresnel lens and had it on display. It's been replaced by a modern navigational light. But the first order Fresnel lens is a brass framework with these curved leaded glass prisms, and it's this kind of beehive shape, and it's about 8 feet tall. It's massive, and what it would do was be to focus the light of the torch, the gas lamp, and send it out to sea. Just an amazing piece of industrial art would be a good way to put it. So if you're ever down that way, on the Atlantic shore of Florida, check out the Ponce de Leon Inlet Lighthouse. It's well worth the trip. Okay, so we were in Exodus chapter 20, and we got through verse 17, which is the end of the Ten Commandments. But again, I want to hammer on the idea that these commandments are given not in isolation or not in an individualistic sense, but are very much about people living in community. And we as American Christians, or Christian Americans, that's a whole different discussion, often struggle with that. We have been taught, we often think that our faith is just me and Jesus. And if me and Jesus are fine, then everything else is fine. And I think that really impoverishes the witness of Scripture. Because throughout the Old Testament and the New Testament, Jesus is always dealing with people in community, people living with other people, people interacting with other people, and his teachings, his actions were almost exclusively. I'm trying to think really quickly if there are many exceptions, and they're not very many at all. That Jesus is talking about people dealing with others, how we interact with other folks. And of course, that is most fully summed up in Jesus giving us the greatest commandment: love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. So the greatest commandment is also about community. So these 10 commandments here in the Old Testament, while we're not beholden to them, we can still learn from them. And I cannot say this enough, we misuse the Ten Commandments when we use them as a checklist to see how we're doing, or to be more honest, to see how much better we're doing than other people. That is a nasty part of human nature, that we make ourselves feel better by comparing ourselves and seeing where we're being better than, perceived better than other people. That's why we humans have an insatiable appetite for scandal and stories of folks stumbling and falling. Makes us feel good. And that is something that is not of God, and we need to be fighting against that. So our Ten Commandments are about living in community, not a checklist that we can think, okay, I've done these things, so I don't have to worry about the rest of my conduct for the day. So, anyway, verse 18. When all the people had witnessed the thunder and the lightning, the sound of the trumpet, and the mountain smoking, they were afraid, and stood at a distance and said to Moses, "You speak to us, and we will listen. But do not let God speak to us, or we will die." Moses said to the people, "Do not be afraid, for God has only come to test you, and to put the fear of him upon you, so you do not sin." Don't be afraid, because God has just come to test you and put his fear upon you. That would not have been comforting words, but it's good. It's still good. God. When we talk about God testing us, when Moses talks about God testing us, I can't put words in Moses' mouth. I don't know what he was thinking when he said that. But here on this side of history, and being part of the new covenant, I don't really think God tests us so that God can find out what we're capable of or what we can do. But God does give us opportunities for testing so that we can learn what we're capable of. I mean, if we've never been tested and tried and had to exert ourselves, we don't really know what we're capable of doing. And that goes for good and for ill as well. So when I think about God testing us, I think it's more about God showing us how good we can be, and also making us confront how bad, how sinful we can be. That's why I mentioned this, I think, a few weeks ago. I think when we use the Old English version, the more common version of the Lord's Prayer that we're used to, "Our Father who art in heaven," when we use the old English version, the rendering, "Lead us not into temptation," I don't think that's a good rendering into English from the Latin. And I'll have to give the Roman Catholics credit for this. They've recently made a push to kind of change all that to save us from the time of trial. Our God doesn't lead us into sin. Our God does not lead us into temptation, but we need to be aware of that so that we can avoid it, and where that God gives us strength to avoid that as well. And so, save us from the time of trial is, I think, a better rendering of that. So, when Moses said God has come to test you, it's not for his benefit, it's for their benefit, so that they can learn how to be faithful. Okay, verse 21. Then the people stood at a distance, while Moses drew near the thick darkness where God was. The Lord said to Moses, "Thus you shall say to the Israelites, You have seen for yourselves, that I have spoken with you from heaven. You shall not make gods of silver alongside me, nor shall you make for yourself gods of gold. You need make for me only an altar of earth, and sacrifice on it your burnt offerings and your offerings of well-being, your sheep and your oxen. In every place where I cause my name to be remembered, I will come to you and bless you. But if you make for me an altar of stone, do not build it of hewn stones, cut stones, for if you use a chisel upon it, you profane it. You shall not go up by steps to my altar, so that your nakedness may not be exposed on it." Okay, several things going on here. God is saying, when you're building altars for me, just use earthen altars. If you use rocks, don't chisel them and shape them. My thought is that God is driving home the idea that what God provides is good enough. We may not think of an earth altar, basically a pile of earth, as being nice enough for God, but what God provides is good enough. And but by not using a chisel on it, I think God is driving home the fact that what man can create isn't really. We run the risk of idolatry, and how do we square that with all of our buildings and things that we've created since then? Well, we've got to be very careful that we don't worship the work of our hands instead of worshiping the Creator in whose honor things are built. If you've been in a church where you can just feel the presence of God, you know it's the presence of God in that place, and you might marvel at the construction, or you might be moved or inspired by the building, but you know it's God that does it, and the architect hasn't trapped God there, or the building is not God. There are some places that are especially hallowed. You can feel them when you enter them, and there are some buildings that do just an amazing job of inspiring you to think about God and reflect on God in different ways. If you ever get a chance to go to one of the big cathedrals in Europe or here in the U.S., or there's a gorgeous one in Brazil, you should do so. It's really interesting to experience God in different ways. We can experience God in a little chapel, experience God in a very personal and nurturing and loving way. But then when we enter one of the great cathedrals, we're inspired by and reminded of the Almighty God, the God of awesome power and splendor and majesty and might. The King of Kings is better revealed in these grand spaces. So those they're both real, they're both true, they're just different aspects of God. And so it's a good idea to kind of mix it up a little bit, so that we can experience God in different ways. And this bit about making ramps so your nakedness is not exposed, for people who wore robes all the time, men and women alike, you could expose yourself, and that would not be good. So, very specific instructions. Okay, so now we're getting into chapter 21, and here are some more specific instructions. God is speaking. These are the ordinances that you shall set before. Chapter 21. These are the ordinances you shall set before them. When you buy a male Hebrew slave, he shall serve for 6 years, but in the 7th year he shall go out a free person without debt. If he comes in single, he shall go out single. If he comes in married, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master gives him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be her master's, and he shall go out alone. But if the slave declares, I love my master, and my wife and my children, I will not go out a free person, then his master shall bring him before God. He shall be brought to the door or the doorpost, and his master shall pierce his ear with an awl, A-W-L, and he shall serve him for life. All right. This is kind of troubling. Let's be honest. Slavery is not God's plan. God is dealing with what is already in existence, human practices that God may not approve of, but God is very definitely putting limits on them, and putting a time frame on it. So I don't think that we can read this as God's approval of slavery, but God putting limits on the power of the owners and the masters. And that has been kind of an ongoing issue, reigning in the power of the rich and the powerful over other people. Okay. More about slavery. Well, let's go ahead and do that. Verse 7. When a man sells his daughter as a slave, she shall not go out as male slaves do. If she does not please her master, who designated her for himself, then he shall let her be redeemed. He shall have no right to sell her to a foreign people, since he has dealt unfairly with her. If he designates her for his son, he shall deal with her as a daughter. If he takes another wife to himself, he shall not diminish the food, clothing, or marital rights of the first wife. if he does not do these three things for her, she shall go out without debt, without payment of she shall go out without debt, without payment of money. So again, God is putting limits on the human practice of slavery, and especially dealing with female slaves. Women have been disempowered throughout history. So God is taking a special interest and special care for the treatment of female slaves. I don't know why God didn't just say, okay, there will be no slavery among you. Maybe that was a bridge too far for the Israelites at that time. God has consistently tried to draw us to Himself. It's been a long process, and we take many steps back, don't we, brothers and sisters, individually and as a group. But anyway, I don't want us to think that God is okay with this, but God is putting limits on it. God is I think setting the stage for changing the practices and the customs of the people. So, yeah, and it's also in the New Testament as well. Slavery was and is, sadly, a widespread practice, and our God is trying to change our hearts very slowly. We are remarkably resistant to that, aren't we, brothers and sisters? All right, I think we're going to kind of stop there for now, and we'll pick up at 21:12 next week. These aren't the Ten Commandments, but these are still some of the laws of Moses that are given, and we will continue wrestling with them. So again, if you've got comments or something, shoot me an email or leave a comment, and we'll deal with it. But until then, I hope you guys have a blessed week. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you in church, either here in person or online. So God bless you, and have a great week.